Now, the shock and horror surrounding the President's Club's event at the Dorchester last Thursday continues to reverberate. The Education Minister, Nadhim Zahawi, has said he will never attend a men-only function again, ever. Lord Mendelssohn has been sacked from Labour's front bench in the Lords because he attended. The club has said it will not hold such an event again, and the Culture Minister, Margot James, would like to see an end to male-only clubs. Well, how do men respond to the implication that they cannot be trusted to behave themselves with propriety if they gather in this way? Martin Daubney is the former editor of Loaded and co-founded the Men and Boys Coalition. Mark Rice-Oxley writes for The Guardian. What was his reaction to what had happened last Thursday?
I think like just about everybody I know, so shocked, appalled. It seems like this event was tone deaf to everything that's been going on in the past sort of 6 months. Felt like we kind of woken up in the middle of a bad 1970s sitcom, just not very funny. I like to look for silver linings or optimism wherever I can. My colleagues will tell you that about me. I can see two shreds of hope here. The first is that when these kind of events happened 25 years ago, no outrage, no shock, no horror at all. So something is changing. This is becoming unacceptable. And secondly, I see a generational thing at play, which is that, as far as I can tell from the Financial Times reporting, most people at this event were sort of brought up in the 60s and 70s when, Britain still was a sexist and bigoted place. And I think that future generations just won't stand for this.
Martin, what was your response?
My response was, any man who goes around, groping women at any event is letting themselves down. They're also letting all men down. Now, let's be frank, the actions of a misogynistic few is being used, hourly, today, to prove somehow that this is indicative of how all men behave. When, as Mark just rightly intimates, this is the opposite of how decent men behave. And I've certainly been in lots of environments where the majority of people are men. When I used to edit Loaded, you can probably imagine. And there was a strict code that people understood. And that was, if you started doing this, you get duffed up. Security would be there, or blokes would step in and stop this. There is decency amongst men.
But what do you suppose in 2018 possessed the organisers to demand their hostesses wear skimpy clothes and matching underwear and offer plastic surgery to spice up wives in the auction?
I think there's a whole investigation should be done into the suppliers of the hostesses, as they're called. What does hostess mean? What else were they doing? And it was a woman who was providing this service, and this feeling of using vainglorious older drunk men and flattering their egos in this kind of penis waving environment, literally and metaphorically, at these auctions, and using glamour to kind of drain resources from them in a kind of primeval and I think quite ugly way. But let's be clear, it's been already, Jess Phillips has said, this is lad culture. This isn't lad culture. This is misogyny. Now, the vast majority of ordinary men do not behave like this and are sickened by this behaviour.
Mark, why would you say a large group of wealthy and successful men with wives and possibly daughters at home would find such an event appealing?
I don't know that all of them did. I mean, it's really hard to say, isn't it? There were 360 men there. We understand that many of them enjoyed themselves. Maybe many of them didn't. Maybe some of them turned up, took one look around and thought, this doesn't feel very 2018, had a drink and went home again. It would be great to hear from them if that was the case. I don't know. This is sort of, and I don't work in the City of London, but this is, I imagine, how the City of London kind of operates. That there's still very much a patriarchy. It's still very macho culture, alpha males, and that from time to time, this is how they let off steam.
So, what was your response to the suggestion that such events and male-only clubs should be banned?
You know what? I kind of agree. I mean, I'm never one for wanting there to be more legislation on the statute books, because then it needs to be enforced. But it does seem to me that if we had clubs saying whites only or a certain ethnic groups only, then we would ban them. We wouldn't allow that. So why do we allow men-only clubs? The only thing I would add is that I do think it's important that, I mean, I think informally men always want to associate with each other, and that's fine. Of course, I think it's great that men can have informal networks where they can let off steam and talk about men's issues with themselves without women being there. But I think it's the formalisation of it that I have a problem with.
We need to be absolutely clear here that it's unfair and erroneous, to say that men, when they gather together, and by the way, this wasn't a men-only gathering. There were 130 women there who were paid, to kind of, I believe, change the dynamic in a way that extracted money through ego. But let's get back to men-only spaces, which have a genuine and really required need right now. Look at the men's sheds movement. This is men who are depressed and socially isolated, working shoulder by shoulder. The Round Table, which is an organisation worthy of our support. Survivors UK for male rape survivors. University campuses where it is still verboten to start men's societies. I've worked with guys trying to get these off the ground, and they are prohibited because it's deemed as sexist. And that's a problem with the President's Club. The actions of these morons is being used to damn the rest of us. Men need support and respond well to men-only environments, and we're using this bad behaviour to stop that happening, and that's wrong.
But what about the idea of banning things like lap dancing clubs that tend to be men-only, where we know that people in the city entertain their corporate clients in such places?
Well, I mean, if we go down that route, then we will be who will be losing work? Who earns the most money in those environments? These are, you have a moral stance on them, but it's capitalism. If there's a demand, there will be a supply, and so long as the behaviour is appropriate. As I said before, I've been in quite a few of these places. There are very strict and quickly enforced rules. If you start getting too handsy, as it's called in the President's Club, you get taken out back, you get roughed up. People understand this, they don't go over that line. But at the President's Club, that didn't seem to be in existence. That's another conversation about security and all this. That's not excusing the men, but I'm saying, I'm not surprised this happened. Where there's wealth, there's privilege, there's booze, there's glamour that's being used deliberately to make these men feel flattered, to make them spend more money. Let's be frank. I'm not surprised that this happened.
Mark?
I was surprised. I'm delighted by the outrage, because I don't think it's going to be happening again. I've been to lap dancing on a stag weekend. I should
not a hen weekend.
Not a hen weekend. No, definitely not.
Because nothing inappropriate happens on hen weekends, does it? Or in hen clubs.
All right, we know it does.
They definitely wouldn't have me. And I felt very uncomfortable. I don't see why they exist, but I also feel that there is a problem with outlawing stuff. You will just drive it underground.
So Mark, rather, from your perspective, I mean, clearly women often enjoy single-sex events. We won't go down the hen night route. But, what male-only events and clubs would you find entirely acceptable and necessary?
End of the season sports nights, awards nights at the cricket club. God, I sound like I'm from the 1950s now, don't I? But beyond that,
a lot of women like cricket.
A lot of women do like cricket, and actually, I've been to events like that, and there are plenty of women there. They come along, and they're part of the club. So acceptable. I don't want to sort of tell other people how to live their lives, but for me personally, men-only events, boring.
Margaret Thatcher, Martin, always used to complain that she was left out of networking and discussions because she used the expression she wasn't clubbable. Mm-hmm. So how do we make such networking open to both sexes so that women get access to male power?
But we have a great number of women-only clubs in the City of London, in workplace. That there are now women-only workplaces being set up. But this is celebrated. This is celebrated as empowering and networking for women. And there's very little resistance from the equality activists about this. It's seen as empowering. Yet when we suggest anything for men, this is seen as retrograde, patriarchal, misogynistic. And I think we have dual standards.
Well, let's be clear. Most networking events are not single sex. I can't think of very many that are. That's why this has come that's why it came as a surprise to me. I could count on the fingers of one finger the number of networking events I've been to that have been excluding one sex or other. So, I mean, I don't think the networking side of it is necessarily a problem. There clearly is still a problem with gender pay, with opportunity, with a number of not boardroom level, but at boardroom level the city is starting to take action. But at senior exec level, there's still a big problem with the the lack of representation of women, and that's where we need to be putting our effort.
And would you go along with that, Martin?
Yeah, look, I'm all for ending inequality wherever it exists. With the Men and Boys Scholarship.
You do have a daughter now, don't you?
I do have a daughter. Yeah, she's 3, and let me tell you, if anybody was doing this to her, they'd be tasting hospital food probably. Sorry if that sounds retrograde and masculine, patriarchal. So sue me. But as far as equality, I want to end equality for boys too. Boys at the bottom of the education stack. That's what I was in Parliament on Wednesday working for that. Let's look at inequality in all of its existence and not just where it only affects women.
Martin Daubney, Mark Rice-Oxley, thank you both very much for being with us, and we would of course like to hear from you on this subject. You can tweet us or you can email us.